Welcome to the Johnny Dell Football Academy podcast on the channel that's trying to answer the whys and hows of the game by talking through and dissecting game film and diving deeper to explain why the X's zig and the O's zag. I am Adam Marino, joined by Mr. Johnny Dell, and we are reminding you, as always, the most fun way to watch is on YouTube, where we go live. There you can comment into the live show. Be sure to hit the notification bell and turn on your notifications so you can be a part of the conversation. We also stream live on Facebook and X. Also, the audio versions are always found on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. Now, if you are live with us in the chat, it's probably because you are subscribed, you've hit the notification bell, and turned those notifications on. So, when sharing with your friends, be sure to let them know. We also love to hear from you outside of our live show. Email us at jonnydelsfootballacademy@gmail.com, and you can always check out the website jfa49.com, as it is the most fun way to support the channel. Also, the way we boost the chat and boost the algorithm is to type out hashtag JD49.
What is up, everybody? We have no Adam Marino today, so give me a mic check. Make sure I'm working there. Hugh Wilkins comes in and says, I wasn't sure there was going to be a show today. I do apologize. I forgot to let everyone know. I had to go get my taxes done today. Had an appointment earlier today, and so we couldn't do a morning show, and I was meaning to go in the afternoon. Forgot to tell all y'all that, so I do apologize for the late notice, but you have your notifications turned on and you are ready for the show. So here we are. It's the end of the combine. We're already starting to see the fruits of all of these GMs and head coaches and all the personnel guys getting together in Indianapolis is coming to around now as teams are priming for free agency. They've got a little bit better idea of their draft boards and they are moving forward. We saw a trade earlier today that a couple trades involving the Texans. So Nick Caserio is busy. He sent off their tackle Titus to the Browns, and then ended up trading for David Montgomery from the Lions. So they made a couple moves there today, and then the Chiefs released Jawan Taylor, who was due about $20 million this year. And so he ended up getting released as the Chiefs are trying to get under the salary cap. They have been over the salary cap, and they're probably going to make a couple more moves, but it is going to restrict what they can do in free agency. So we have those sorts of things coming about. It was an exciting last couple days of the combine as we saw guys running receivers and safeties, running backs, tight ends, guys running the gauntlets, running their 40s. The 40 is, clearly the main event sort of at the NFL combine. Not many people are knowing what it's the short shuttle doesn't exactly tell you a lot. It's hard to tell from guy to guy, okay, how much better were they really? But you can easily see the difference in their 40 times. They're right there, and you see one guy's clearly faster than another in a game that is predicated on speed. The big headlines coming out of the combine was when Kenyon Sadiq running a sub 4.40 as a tight end. He's the first tight end since Vernon Davis to run sub 4.4. And now I will say Vernon Davis also did it at 256 pounds. Kenyon Sadiq is 241, and people will act like that's not a big difference in weight. And I go, yeah, that is at their size. That's about a 7% increase in weight. And the way physics works, it takes a lot more power to move weight than it does to move less weight. So just next time you pull up, you're in a sedan and you pull up next to a big truck next to you, and you can beat that truck off the line, just remember it isn't because your vehicle has twice the horsepower or has more horsepower than that vehicle next to you. It's because yours weighs a lot less, even though that one has twice the horsepower. So weight makes a lot of difference in acceleration and speed. So I will say, since he's throwing himself under the bus, Cayman's Island, we had a great time. Was that Saturday night? We ended up faced off. I took a break in between the time, or no, it was Friday night. I can't remember. The days are all running together. It was Saturday night. It was Saturday night, because I did my taxes all Sunday night. I got them all prepped. But Saturday, we got on the old Madden and we played a couple games, and he put up a good challenge. And he says, I would like to publicly admit I lost my man JD in Madden. He said, thanks, Ricky Pearsall. It did come down to a dropped Ricky Pearsall catch in the end zone. Fred Warner, I got the hit stick on Fred Warner onto Ricky Pearsall, and he dropped the pass in the end zone. But he does. What will we get in the end for Mac Jones? Second or third round pick? I think a third round pick would be a point where the 49ers would just say thanks, but no thanks. If they play out Mac Jones's contract and he leaves in free agency to go be a starter, they're going to get a third round comp for him. So they have no incentive at a third round pick to move him. They'd say, this is a guy that he's the reason we were in the playoffs this year, because while Brock was out for 8 games, Mac came in and carried the bag long enough for us to stay in there. So I don't think you send him for anything less than a second and change, because again, you're looking at, I'm going to get a third anyways. So what is the value trade-off? I think you need to do it needs to be a second and a conditional fourth or fifth at least to move him. I think the 49ers want a second and a player, or a second and a conditional third. I think that's what they want. And I do think that there's going to be a number of teams that are interested. The Vikings make a lot of sense. Any team that the big reason why is because he's got a cheap year contract on the books. So any team that trades for him is not looking at, well, he's got this leverage to say, well, I'm just going to sit out the year and not play under this contract. They're going to look at him and say, well, you were going to play under that contract with the 49ers. So whoever he goes to gets him basically on the cost of a rookie. And this is a weak rookie class. And there's a lot of coaches that I think are going to be really coaching to keep their jobs. I would not be surprised if, for example, the Steelers, if they have a 5 and 12 year, I would not be surprised if Mike McCarthy's one and done and they move on. And they maybe try and bring Mike Tomlin back because they still have his contract rights. I think there's going to be a number of places that, there's going to be short leashes for how they have, and they need answers at quarterback. The Vikings are a clear destination where I think that makes sense. Is, Kevin O'Connell, you sent Sam Darnold out the door and he just won a Super Bowl, and you hedged your bet on JJ McCarthy, and that has looked really terrible. They've got to figure out something there at the quarterback position, because if they have a bad year with JJ McCarthy, and Kevin O'Connell is not coaching in 2027. So there's guys who their jobs are going to be on the line, and that will highly motivate them to go get a Mac Jones. So that would be very interesting. And coming away from this combine, I find that there's a whole lot of guys that we've been talking about pretty much since the Senior Bowl, that their stock, I think, went up. And I feel like, kind of like last year, there was a number of guys that we were really liking coming off of the Senior Bowl, and it felt like we needed more and more second and third round picks, that a lot of these guys were going to be second and third round picks, and they weren't going to be there by the 4th round, even though pre-Senior Bowl, a lot of these guys were 4th and 5th round projections. And people kept telling me I was crazy when I'd say some of these guys had really improved their draft stock between the Senior Bowl and the Combine, and they were going to be second and third round picks. And then they ended up going in the second and third round picks. Femi Oladejo, I was very famously last year really high on the kid, and he went in the 2nd round to the Titans. So we get to go see what Saleh can do with him. But there was all these guys that their draft stock rose, and we saw the same thing right now, and I'm getting a little sad because I want more and more second and third round picks. You know, I'm not so much into the first round picks as everybody else is. You know, I think there's a lot of good players there. Mostly a first round pick doesn't work out most of the time. It's because there was some sort of player issue there as far as mental side of the game. It wasn't about production on the field or physical qualities. So there's other things going on. And that's a whole different story. But for me, I love to see a lot of these second and third round picks. There's a lot of good players. They may not be the all arounders, but they are players that can really do something. And so we're going to talk about a few of these guys. I have a few minutes here before I got to go pick up my daughters from school. But just really, I think helped their stock big time coming off of the senior or the combine. And some of these guys didn't really test at all. And I think that alone, it makes me say, okay, I'm a little bit lower on you than I was going into it, because I want to see you go compete on these things. I want to see you test. I want to see you. I don't want to see you just at your pro day. I want to see you not with an extra 2 weeks to train for these different events. I want to see it now. I want to see it when everybody else is doing it. I think it's getting ridiculous how many guys are showing up to the combine and not testing. Like, they're just showing up for the interviews. And I'm like, I want to see how you compare to everybody else. And I don't want you to have that 2 weeks, 3 weeks advantage of pro days or, your top 30 visits. So I think the number one guy, and a guy that I've been high on since the Senior Bowl, hyped him up almost every day there at the Senior Bowl in the hotel room, and he showed up to the combine, and I know everybody's just blown away by Kenyon Sadiq. I know that he was there, and everybody was just oohing and on over a lot of the athletic traits. But if we actually kind of look under the hood on this, Kenyon Sadiq, he had a great combine. He's also performing a really impressive combine as an undersized tight end. And, so his relative athletic score is 9.58. And a lot of that has to do with that he's 6'3" and he's 241. So their composite size grade for him as a tight end is not ideal. He's an undersized tight end. So you would expect him to test really well in the 10-yard split, 20-yard split, 40-yard dash, vertical, broad jump. Now, they were incredible numbers. But when you start thinking about, okay, what do the 49ers need from a tight end? They like big body tight ends. You look at Luke Farrell, Jake Tonjes, going back in time to some of the different guys he had here, Charlie Warner. These were bigger body guys. They like a bigger frame. They want guys who can block really well. I'm not saying Kenyon Sadiq can't. He just doesn't fit some of the size profiles. Now his speed and everything is crazy good. But there's a guy that I was in love with since the Senior Bowl, Sam Rush from Stanford, who showed up, and his size, 6'6", 267. His composite relative athletic score was 9.94, one of the highest relative athletic scores for a tight end in combine history. Mr. Sam Rush. His 10-yard split was 1.61. That is close to Von Miller 10-yard split. 20-yard split 2.71. 40-yard is 4.7. I'm not a huge, I don't like it's a bonus for me if you can get a tight end down to 4.5, but at 4.7, I will say that's really, really similar to the Terrence Ferguson. I think he ran 4.68, 4.7 at the combine last year. A kid out of Oregon, really liked him last year as a tight end, and he had a really solid, good year for the Rams this last year as a set number 2 tight end for them. 4.7 and made some good catches right over D winners. 4.7 is enough for any tight end. Really, it's about the 10-yard split, the 20-yard split for your tight ends. And that was where actually Sam Rush was stronger. He tapered off. He lost speed down the last 20 yards comparative to other tight ends. His percentile was higher for the 10-yard split, for the 20-yard split. His 3-cone was 7.08 seconds. That's a phenomenal 3-cone at his size. His vertical, 38.5-inch vertical leap at 267 pounds. That is wild. Broad jump, it was 10 feet 6 inches. At his size, we were talking about elite athletic traits for his size. That he had been talked about as a potential early 5th round pick going into the Senior Bowl because he didn't have a lot of catches there at Stanford. He wasn't used in the passing game. I talked about it. Their passing game was not great. That was a lot of what hid his pass catching abilities. He went to the Senior Bowl, was catching almost everything in sight, running good routes, blocking really well. We knew from Stanford that he was a blocker, and now he shows up to the combine and puts up the best RAS score out of any tight end there. And suddenly now you're talking about Sam Rush as a 3rd round pick, maybe even late 2nd. So if I'm the 49ers, this kid is definitely on my radar. I'm looking at that. If you get a 2nd round pick for Mac Jones, then you start looking at, okay, you may go defense 1st round. They love to go defense 1st round, maybe wide receiver, but 2nd round, somewhere in there, you are looking at this kid, Sam Rush. I think you really have to think long and hard of this might be your potential successor to George Kittle. This can be somebody who comes in and allows you to keep up with all the other teams and the way the league has been moving towards more 12 and 13 personnel of 2 tight ends. They love to do it back when Charlie Warner was here and but the other tight end we had for a long time and he left. They've been trying to replace that. They really wanted to go that route. If you remember back in 2020, and injuries kind of kept that derailed. But I think he'd be the best number 2 tight end that we've had in a very long time. I really like Sam Rush, and I think he absolutely helped out his draft stock big time coming out of the Senior Bowl. I would say another kid who really helped out his draft stock is Ted Hurst. Ted Hurst was already having a good bit of buzz, but he came out and he showed incredible athletic traits. His relative athletic score is 9.92 coming out of the combine. 6'4", 206. Again, at that height, ran a 4.4, 240. So, I mean, it's pretty good. 10-yard split, 1.55. That's the same as Nick Bosa. That is it. That guy is moving over those first 10 yards. His broad jump, 11 feet, 3 inches. Incredible explosiveness, incredible explosion in the hips. Means he can run through tackles, and a vertical of 36.5 inches. I think Ted Hurst really helped out his draft stock. Hand size is really good. Arm length, 32.5 inches at 6'4". That gives you a huge catching radius. That's what you love. Now you get speed and a big catch radius. So he really helped himself out. Another guy that you're not seeing a lot on the social medias, and I don't know why, because I love this kid. I talked to him at the Senior Bowl. That I really like this guy. As a center, Mr. Jake Slaughter out of Florida showed up, put on a great combine. 32 and almost a half-inch arms, which, isn't the longest for his height. He's 6'5", but that is an inch and a half longer than Jake Brendel's arms. And one of Jake Brendel's struggles has always been short arms. So he's got great height, good length for an interior guy. For an interior, 32.5-inch arms is perfectly fine. That's why he wasn't a tackle, is because he didn't have long enough arms. But his 40-yard dash, 5.1, which is really good for that size offensive lineman. 10-yard split, again, that's where it really matters. How quickly can you get up to the second level? 1.74. That puts him in the top percentiles of interior offensive linemen in this draft class. His vertical, 32.5 inches. That's an incredible vertical for a guy that is his size and weight at 303. Broad jump, 9 feet 2 inches. Both of those, again, are in the upper 90th percentiles. That tells you, again, explosive hips, explosive quads. That the guy has an incredible amount of explosion in the lower body. That's what you need as an interior offensive lineman to match up against those defensive tackles. His relative athletic score, 9.91. So this is a kid, again, it didn't start from I went to the Senior Bowl and would just like this guy for a certain reason. I had gone back and I watched his tape at Florida, really liked his tape at Florida, watched him at the Senior Bowl, continued to see what I wanted to see at the Senior Bowl. Like, I liked what I heard when I talked to him. Now he shows up to the combine and is one of the most athletic linemen in this class and one of the most athletic interior offensive linemen, plays center, really smart, headsy kid. I would love to go get Jake Slaughter as an offensive lineman, as our heir apparent at center. I think the future is now at center, and we could actually address it. Another kid that I think everybody was expecting to test really well, and I think he more kept his stock where it's at, is Max Iheanacho from Arizona State. Everybody was expecting him to show up and perform well, really well athletically. And that's exactly what you got. Sub 540, 1.73 10-yard split. Now, I will say Jake Slaughter was a little bit faster on his 10-yard split. Good vertical, good broad jump, good everything on here. He really did well. And 9.91 relative athletic score coming out of the combine. That's what you expected. So, he showed exactly where it's going to be. To the question for Big Papa, where does Jake Slaughter go? That's a really good question right now. I feel like Jake Slaughter's probably a 3rd-round pick right now. He may have moved himself up into the 2nd round. I hope not, but you just don't know in these drafts. Everything, sometimes we have guys as late 3rds and then they end up moving into the 2nd. I think the lack of good center prospects, I think he's going to be one of the top 3 or 4 centers come out in this draft class. That's where it really comes down to. It's hard because when you say 3rd-round pick, sometimes it makes it sound like a guy is way down there, but you still might be talking about a top 5 player at their position because, of how many players there are at different positions. Another kid I talked about a lot at the Senior Bowl as a safety that I really liked, and he showed up and showed exactly what I wanted to see, and went, okay, he really is it. That athletic ability is the real deal. It's VJ Payne from Kansas State. Really like this kid at the Senior Bowl. Incredible coverage safety. Could match up against tight ends. Could match up against some wide receivers. Really good arm length. He's 6'3". He's a tall, lengthy safety. 206. Ran a 4.40 40. So blazing fast 40. Really showed that long speed. Had a good vertical, great broad jump. 9.87 relative athletic score. Some of the relative athletic scores coming out of this combine were just wild. So VJ Payne, I think, really helped himself out. The questions are going to be, can he stop the run? That's one thing that you didn't see as much of at Kansas State. Wasn't as aggressive against the run, but he's an incredible coverage safety, something we struggled in last year. Another guy that you've seen mocked to the 49ers a lot at 27, really helped himself out here. That is Caleb Lamu out of Utah, offensive tackle. If you're looking at who's going to be the heir apparent to Trent Williams, he's somebody that starts to make a lot of sense. Sub 540, 10-yard split was 1.74. It was a really nice 40. He's not as fast as Trent Williams, but he's got really good movement skills for a tackle that is 6'6", 313 pounds, and has over 33-inch arms. Those are the things that really matter at offensive tackle there. Incredible vertical for his size, 32.5, broad jump over 9 feet, incredible explosion, 9.88 relative athletic score. Just really showed out. Another guy that I've talked about, showed film of here. I really like this kid out of USC, and people have been giving me a hard time because they say he is nowhere close to going to be as high of a pick as you think. And I'm telling you, this kid is gonna be. I'm seeing it. Like the things are falling in. I really liked his tape, really liked his Senior Bowl. Now he went to the combine and had a sneaky good combine that nobody is talking about because they're already what happens is you have people are getting confirmation bias. And I know I can be guilty of that at times too, but I don't feel like that's what's going on here because he had one of the highest relative athletic scores of any of the wide receivers. And the question coming out for him, and this is one Jacoby Lane from USC, was did he have the speed to play X receiver? And I said on this show, and I said it with Rob Guerrera on our show on Thursdays. I said the game film shows he's got the speed down the field. There were some projections I was seeing that he was going to run a 4.740. And I looked at that and I said, there's no way. I watched the tape. You see him running faster than that. He looks faster than 4.7 down the sideline because he was winning deep. And at the Senior Bowl, I was seeing him beat guys down the field and they were grabbing to try and keep him from winning. You're grabbing arms, grabbing jerseys, preventing some of these deep balls getting thrown on him because he just is really smooth and would take off down the field, set guys up, and he was winning deep. He went to the combine, ran a 4.4740. He had an incredible gauntlet, maybe the smoothest gauntlet of any of the receivers there. He has the speed to win deep. He's got the long speed, incredible long strider. And he showed up, had a great, that 4.4740 is when people were expecting him to go be 4.7. So again, Malachi Fields, who meant everybody was saying they would put him over Jacoby Lane. And I kept saying, for me, it was Jacoby was 1A, Malachi Fields was 1B. If we were talking about those two guys in maybe like an early second, late first kind of slot, Malachi Fields ran a 4.61. And so Jacoby showed up, ran a 4.47. He's been working with TJ Hushmanzada since his college season ended. He's 6'4", 200 pounds. He's got the size, big, huge catch radius. His vertical, 40-inch vertical. So now we're talking about a 6'4" receiver with almost 33-inch arms, who runs in a 4.47 and has got a 40-inch vertical. I'm really liking this kid. Okay. His broad jump over 10 feet. He had an incredible combine, relative athletic score of 9.69. 9.69. Incredible athletic score. So really, I think he helped himself out. Any thought that he was going to be there in the third round, I think is gone. I think he has clearly solidified himself as a top 60 player in this draft. Another guy, as I'm trying to get through some of these, that I think really helped himself out, Keelan Rutledge out of Georgia Tech, had a really strong Senior Bowl. I've got him in here somewhere. I'd written a bunch of notes about Keelan Rutledge on my Senior Bowl. There it is. I've got, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different notes I made on Keelan Rutledge, who they were all good notes from the Senior Bowl. He's got good long arms for an interior guy, over 33-inch arms. That 10-yard split. It's not as good as like Jake Slaughter. Again, Jake Slaughter had a phenomenal combine. I'm telling you, this guy, I really like this kid. His 10-yard split was 1.8. But the 3-cone was phenomenal. It's what they really, really like for offensive linemen. His score was a 9.12, which is really good. Big time vertical, good broad jump, shows the explosion. His composite score was 9.62. Keelan Rutledge is going to be gone by the end of the third round. There's no way that kid makes it past the third round. So really showed out well there. Another guy, one of our, we're coming down to the last couple guys that I felt like really helped themselves out. Bud Clark, free safety from Texas Christian University, TCU. Another kid I really liked at the Senior Bowl. He was so rangy, getting his hands on passes, picking the quarterbacks off, showing sideline to sideline, deep safety range. He had 15 interceptions in college. The question was, Is it just because he was picking off some bad quarterbacks or some weak-armed quarterbacks? He showed up at the combine, ran a 4.4 140 with a 1.53 10-yard split. Elite speed and burst numbers from him. He's a little bit undersized as a safety, but 38-inch vertical over a 10-foot broad jump, a 9.32 relative athletic score. This kid has launched himself easily into the third or maybe second round. These are all guys, when you start getting into the second and third round, remember all of these names, because as they go off the board, we're going to be whittling it down to, it's going to be out of this group, I think, is where the 49ers are looking for. Another guy who I think really helped himself out and probably has solidified that he's not going to be there at 27 for the 49ers is TJ Parker out of Clemson. Somebody I've been talking about since the Senior Bowl. He had a great week at the Senior Bowl after a down year at Clemson off of his 2024 that was great. Showed up, ran a 1.62 10-yard split, which is right on the borderline of that elite. It's great. It's not elite. Again, Nick Bosa's was 155. Michael Williams was 161, I think. You around for TJ Watt, I think was 159. So when you're in that 155 to 165 sort of range, that's your what you want from your defensive ends. Those edge rushers. Arm length is good, over 33 inches arms. Those were questions about Reuben Bain and Cassius Howell, guys that have really good pedigrees and everything else, but they showed up at the combine and their arms were measured at 30 and a half inches. Not so great. I will say a few guys who, to me, their stock goes down. Zion Young from Missouri. You guys know I like him. I've gone over some of his film. I went over it with Rob as well. I like Zion Young. He showed up, didn't test. Don't like it. For me, I want to see your 10-yard split. I want to see your broad jump. I want to see your vertical. I want to see the explosion that you have at your size. He showed up, got measured, 6'6", 262, 33-inch arms. Okay, great. But I want to see Zion Young. I want to see your 10-year splits. I want to see that. You show up and you want to wait till the perfect time to do that. Well, the NFL is not about playing under the perfect conditions. You need to show up and you need to do it under any conditions. And so I wanted to see him test, and he didn't. And for me, that does rub me the wrong way, and he becomes less of a guy I'm really interested in at that point. Another guy did the same thing, who I have very close to Zion Young as a player, is Derek Moore from Michigan. He showed up, same thing, got measured, went home, or did interviews, went home, didn't do any of the on-field tests. He showed up, apparently says his size metrics are enough. He doesn't need to show it on the field, because he's 6'4", 255 with 33.4-inch arms. So don't like that these guys didn't test. Don't like it at all. I will say a guy that I had been kind of high on as I was looking at maybe a late round defensive end, sneaky prospect who might be able to, show something. And I wanted to see more of was Quintavious Hutchins out of Boston College. I'm out. His 10-yard split was 1.73. That is not good enough for the NFL, and that solved why he was having a hard time racking up sacks at Boston College, because when teams could game plan for him, they knew that he wasn't going to beat the edge. He's got incredibly quick feet. He can win on some inside moves, but as everybody was playing against him, they realized you just short set against him. Don't give him those inside moves. Make him go over the hump, and he doesn't have the speed to do it. So Quintavious Hutchins, I'm out. I'm not interested in you as an edge rusher. I think another guy, LT Overton from Alabama. I like the Alabama guys. I do. 1.7 yard, 10-yard split as a defensive end ain't going to cut it for me. So I'm out. I'm out on you. I think I was interested. Not anymore. If I see your name called, I'm going to be sending a strongly worded letter to 49ers headquarters. Um, but no, I will also say a guy that I was expecting to run a better 10-yard split than he did was Vincent Anthony from Duke. He ran a 1.67. That's right on that edge where for his body type and size, he needed to be down at 1.61, and he's 1.67. I know that seems like it's just splitting hairs, but the margin in the NFL is really tight. And once you get past 165, it's really hard to beat a lot of these tackles on speed rushes. And if you're going to be an undersized kind of speed rush guy, 167 isn't going to do it. You need to be about 20 pounds bigger and have a much better bull rush if you're going to be 167. I will say a couple guys that landed, I did not expect them to be right next to each other. Because I thought Vincent Anthony's 10-yard split was going to be faster than Max Lewin, and Max Lewin came out and ran a 1.64 10-yard split, which is that's a pretty good 10-yard split, and it's kind of reinforcing, I think, what I felt about the kid is that he's going to be a pretty good at everything guy, but I don't think he's going to be a truly elite at anything. I think he's going to be a pretty good at a lot of things. And so he's an interesting prospect to continue to think about going forward. Ndame Tucker, a kid I like. He ran a 1.63 10-yard split. Again, that's right on that edge. At his size, I would have liked to have seen it closer to 1.6. But that's still enough to where you keep him in the conversation. So there's only a handful of guys this year that ran 1.6 and less. At 1.6 and less, you got Trey Moore out of Texas. Malachi Lawrence ran a 1.59 at a UCF. Arvell Reese from Ohio State 1.58, and then Cassius Howell from Texas A&M 1.58. So, there's gonna be guys there. There's Danny Dennis Sutton. He had a phenomenal combine. I think his relative athletic score was near 10. It was one of the highest at the combine period among anybody. Let me double check on this. Where is Danny? There he is. He wasn't the highest, but he was a 9.96. So, which is just insane. And he had a really good one. So that's somebody that's going to be interesting. He was at the Senior Bowl. I have some good notes from him from the Senior Bowl. So I'm going to go back and watch his film. He's somebody that I didn't have as many positive notes on as these other guys. And so I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to go back and I'm going to check out your game tape and see, what's going on there. But coming off the combine, those are some of the guys who've really improved themselves. And we're seeing that there's some guys that we had them on the scene, had noted them at the Senior Bowl. And now you see, and it was why I was seeing them on the field, and you saw that they were just better athletes than some of these other guys. And now they go to the combine and they show it. They show that there's some of these best athletes coming out of this, some guys to really keep your eyes on and keep your ears open to hearing about going forward. We're going to dive into film on almost every one of these guys, I think, over the next couple weeks. We're going to try and really, really hone in on these guys and dive in and see. We're going to go over Sam Rush's game tape. I'm excited to show you guys some of this. Great blocker, good in the pass game. I just love me some Sam Rush. He has become my number one draft crush out of this this class. And then I think number two after that is Jake Slaughter. And the combine has reinforced these two things. And then I think the third guy be Jacoby Lane. I really like these guys. So, but thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your support. Thanks for everything. But until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and as always, go Niners.